Good morning and welcome back. Well, that was a great way to start this session. Lots of beautiful scenery and lots of great things for the future looking forward, thanks to Tourmaline. So now to introduce our keynote speaker, we have Leah Turner, who is with the Public Affairs with Tourmaline. Welcome, Leah, and thank you so much for Tourmaline's support.
Thank you, Cheryl, and thank you for all the hard work that you put into this session today. Good morning, everyone. I'm pleased to be joining you from Calgary, which is located in the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Tsuut'ina, the Mountain Nakota Nations, the Métis Nation, Region 3, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. Tourmaline is proud to be the presenting sponsor for this conference. It's wonderful to see so many valued partners and peers here today. As our video mentioned, Tourmaline is the largest natural gas producer in Canada, and we have strong roots in British Columbia. With active operations in the Montney complex and a team based in Fort St. John, we are deeply committed to investing in BC and supporting the developing LNG industry. We believe the future of Canada's LNG industry is an exciting one, not just for BC and all of Canada, but for the many countries that need affordable, low-carbon energy, and we are thrilled to be a part of it. Here at Tourmaline, our vision is to provide Canada and the world with clean and affordable natural gas. And innovation is our driving force. The clean technologies we're investing in today are enabling us to drastically reduce emissions, conserve land, and recycle water. In BC, as the video mentioned, our extensive water recycling infrastructure allows us to recycle over 95% of the water used in our completions activities. And we're not stopping there. Another initiative that's making a real difference is our company-wide effort to replace the use of diesel with our own natural gas. Making the switch to a cleaner burning fuel is reducing GHG emissions and saving costs throughout our operations. As we continue to champion initiatives like these to improve our own environmental performance, we are also dedicated to elevating the industry as a whole. And a great example of this leadership is that Tourmaline is a proud investor in the Natural Gas Innovation Fund, an organization funding clean tech innovation throughout the natural gas value chain. In the context of this partnership, we are thrilled to partner with them in the Emissions Testing Center. As our contribution, we're helping companies test their emission-reducing technologies at the Tourmaline-operated gas processing facility in Edson, Alberta. Mitigating methane emissions throughout our operations is something we're passionate about. So we're excited to help advance clean tech solutions for everyone in the industry. With the strides the natural gas sector has already made and the great work that's underway, it's clear to us that the world needs Canada's natural gas, and we know LNG will play a critical role. We are proud to support LNG by developing the lowest possible emission natural gas supply. So it is with special excitement I'm here today to introduce Bryan Cox, the President and CEO of the Canadian LNG Alliance. Bryan is a proud advocate for Canada's LNG industry, and he works closely with communities, business and Indigenous leaders, government, and the general public to build a sector that will benefit all Canadians. As someone with a long history of advocating for BC industries, Bryan is certainly up to the task. Prior to joining the BC LNG Alliance and leading its transition to a national entity, he was the president and CEO of the Mining Association of British Columbia. He also spent several years in the province's brewing industry, and before that held senior roles within the government of British Columbia. I've had the pleasure of chatting with Bryan and his team on a few occasions, and have always appreciated their drive to establish an LNG industry that's inclusive, equitable, and beneficial for all Canadians. Today, we get to hear firsthand how Bryan envisions the LNG opportunity facing Canada and the world. Please join me in welcoming Bryan Cox.
Well, thank you very much, Leah, for that kind introduction. And thank you for talking a bit about what Tourmaline is doing. It's an absolutely great story that's occurring, and there's many of those happening out there as we speak. Thank you to the Fort St. John Chamber of Commerce, to Cheryl and team for organizing this event and inviting me to speak today. It is just a great lineup of speakers that you have over the next 2 days, and I'm really, really pleased to be able to lead it off with a bit of a keynote. I hope you've all had your coffee. I hope you're ready to be energized about energy and have a little chat about what the LNG opportunity is for British Columbia, for Canada. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge that I am joining you from the traditional unceded territory of the Katzie, Kwantlen, and Semiahmoo nations. I'm happy to be here connecting with everyone virtually. And boy, I really hope we can do this in person really, really soon. And knowing that we're going to stage 2 today, I look forward to the opportunities for us to connect in person again very, very soon. Today, I want to talk about connections and how we can come together to build a new energy dialogue in Canada. The Canadian LNG Alliance is the voice for the LNG industry in Canada. And I believe that Canada's natural gas has a strong future. I believe that because Canada's low-emission natural gas, produced to the highest environmental, social, and governance criteria, has an important role to play going forward towards global decarbonization, particularly through the pathway of liquefied natural gas. And because of that, we have a lot to be excited for. I believe that Canada's LNG is an accelerator to economic recovery, an accelerator to Indigenous reconciliation, an accelerator to reducing emissions, an accelerator to eliminating energy poverty, and most importantly, an accelerator to global decarbonization through energy transformation. By deploying the right energy solutions in the right places at the right time, we can accelerate our energy transformation while meeting the goals of equity and economic recovery. This truly is Canada's time for LNG. We have spent over 10 years carefully building partnerships, fostering innovation, and developing the lowest emission LNG industry in the world. This matters. Why? Because we are in the midst of an energy transformation. Because the LNG market is rapidly focusing on emissions intensity of cargoes. Because Canada has taken the time to carefully develop our industry, focusing on sustainability and partnerships. We are doing the hard work. It is our time to build. LNG Canada will be the lowest emitting LNG facility in the world when it goes into operation. Woodfibre LNG, Fortis BC's Tilbury project, Cedar LNG are all planned to be lowest emitting as well. By further developing our LNG industry, we can help higher emitting countries reduce their emissions across their economy, the industrial, transportation, residential, and electricity sectors. And Canada's lowest emission LNG can be used as one of the pathways to the development of their own hydrogen economies. All of this because we are successfully building the lowest emission LNG facilities anywhere in the world, in partnership with local communities and in collaboration with First Nations. We've all been through a lot over these past 16 months, each of us. And I think that as we move forward, particularly when it comes to solving for the challenges that face us, we need to see the humanity in each other. So I wanted to share a bit about what drives me and what brought me to the LNG industry. Over the past 15 years, I've worked in 3 industries: beer, mining, and LNG. I've always chosen roles based on connecting people, believing in big things and big ideas, along with sustainability, community, and economic development. And I'm a dad. Like all parents, I want to make sure my decisions today contribute to a sustainable and prosperous future for my children's generation. As a kid growing up in Alberta, I lived through the oil industry crash of the early 1980s. My father's business was a supplier to the industry and was devastated when the industry crashed. It was not an easy time for my family, and I saw a lot of other friends and families also struggling to make ends meet. That's where my commitment to industries that can be sustainable, resilient, and provide economic development for communities began. My passion, like all of yours, is rooted in a desire to grow our future, create equity, and build healthy communities. After working for the BC government, my first private sector job was with Molson. It was a dynamic time. I was the corporate affairs lead for the company's sponsorship of the 2010 Olympic and Paralympic Winter Games. During the years of planning and during those 17 days, I was able to witness firsthand the way our entire country, from coast to coast to coast, rallied together in common purpose and celebrated. I'm equally proud of the work I did leading the development of Molson's National Responsible Drinking Program, recognizing that the company was most successful when our beverages were enjoyed in the right way. I then went on to Canada's national brewers, leading the regulatory files, including container recycling. Most people aren't aware that the beer industry pioneered container recycling in Canada 100 years ago, realizing that getting bottles back instead of making new ones is good business. Still today, the average beer bottle is reused up to 15 times, and the recycling rates for beer cans are among the highest of all containers. Economically driven environmental stewardship is practical and successful. At the Mining Association of BC, we were the first mining association to step out and communicate how mining is not just pulling metals and minerals out of the ground, but an industry essential to empowering a lower carbon economy. We wrapped an electric car with the tagline, "This car is fueled by mining," and we developed the One Province, One Economy report that showed how mining provides economic benefits to every single community in BC, linking the importance of an industry to our shared environmental and economic goals, linking economic activity that takes place in more rural regions of the province to our urban manufacturing and tech centers. Sustainability, inclusion, and economic development brought me to the LNG industry. I was drawn to the opportunities a new industry for Canada presented, and most importantly, an industry that is being built in partnership with communities and First Nations in the most sustainable way. Now, I wanted to share all that with you because I know there's not one of you listening today who works in or supplies this industry or others that isn't focused on doing the right thing too, for your families, for your communities, for the planet. There are so many more things that unite us than divide us. A year ago, the Alliance evolved to become the Canadian LNG Alliance from the BC LNG Alliance. We wanted to accurately reflect the critical role LNG has to play in the economic recovery from COVID-19, economic reconciliation with Indigenous communities, and Canada's clean energy transition for all of Canada. And since then, our purpose has evolved even further. When it comes to Canada's clean energy transition, the Canadian LNG Alliance's aim is to foster an inclusive conversation about decarbonization in Canada through a yes and approach. Now, what is yes and? Yes and is a concept increasingly used in organizations to help in brainstorming two solutions. The yes encourages people to speak up and also to listen and have an open, receptive mind. The and is used to build dialogue, add new information, and drive to solutions. It means that ideas can be presented without judgment and without being shot down. Instead, ideas are affirmed and refined through discussion. Yes and encourages communication by allowing people to voice their own perspective while acknowledging what others are saying, and then using shared values to drive to solutions. It's time for an inclusive dialogue on energy in this country that will encourage a change in how we talk about energy in Canada and focus on how we can come together to achieve our shared goals through our shared values. So what can a yes and approach look like for Canada's energy dialogue? Well, it has been a long time since we've had something to rally around in Canada. And I believe we have an opportunity to rally around decarbonization and the opportunities for economic recovery, Indigenous reconciliation, and cleaner energy solutions that stem from it. To reach our goal of net zero carbon emissions by 2050, we need to start right now, and we need all the help we can get. Both current and emerging energy solutions can both help us get there. We need to acknowledge that there's no one single solution that will lead to rapid decarbonization, and we need to use the tools we have right now to achieve results. We need to use the right tools in the right place at the right time. Both current and emerging energy sources and technologies are key to decarbonization, and we should prioritize those that help us grow our economy and deliver accessible and reliable cleaner energy solutions. For LNG, a yes and approach means that we say yes to LNG, and we have an inclusive conversation about the ways it can help us meet our shared goals and empower multiple energy pathways. And there's no one-size-fits-all approach to this energy transition. We need to take into account what tools we have available right now, as well as energy affordability and energy equality. We have all witnessed a very clear demonstration this year of the power of how saying yes to the tools we have available helps us to overcome challenges. BC's restart plan for COVID-19 has hinged on as many people as possible getting vaccinated, which is why we're at phase 2 today. The best vaccine is the one available to you right now, became the mantra. If we had all held out for our favorite vaccine, we would still be a long ways from emerging from the COVID-19 pandemic. It took British Columbians collectively doing their part and saying yes to the first vaccine available to get us to where we are today in phase 2 of a restart plan. I'm proudly part of Gen X Zeneca myself and took advantage of the AstraZeneca as soon as it became available. And I look forward to my second shot when it's available. The fastest route to decarbonization is via the tools we have right now. And one of those tools is Canada's low emission LNG. Yes, we must decarbonize, and we cannot do so at the expense of leaving others in energy poverty. We need to say yes and to energy equality. Affordable, reliable, lower carbon energy is essential for energy equality. LNG is an affordable source of lower carbon energy for both developed and developing countries. And these countries are choosing LNG as a key solution as they develop their own pathways to net zero. According to IHS Markit, more than half of future LNG demand will come from countries with net zero emission targets. Japan has pledged its support for LNG project financing because it sees LNG as a transitional energy source that can supplement renewables and as a feedstock for producing hydrogen. Both pathways are expected to help lead the country to carbon neutrality. Tokyo Gas and 14 other Japanese companies across a variety of sectors have formed a carbon neutral LNG buyers alliance to promote the use of LNG as a tool to net zero. By saying yes to LNG, Japan is using the tools they have available right now and planning for the continued energy transformation. South Korea is saying yes to LNG as it looks to phase out coal-fired power and making massive investments. China is saying yes and to LNG as it pivots away from coal-fired electricity. And importantly, while only about 1% of China's population still doesn't have access to electricity, over 25% of the population, almost 400 million people, over 10 times the population of Canada, don't have access to clean cooking fuels, which greatly adds to both emissions and particulate matter in the air, massively impacting human health. According to the WHO, 7 million people die each and every year globally due to poor outdoor household air quality from high emission, high particulate fuels. 7 million people every year. Canadian LNG can help. India is saying yes and to LNG across its economy, including transportation, investing billions of dollars in infrastructure to facilitate a shift to LNG as a transportation fuel to solve for emissions and also particulate matter. Asian countries like the Philippines, Vietnam, and Thailand are saying yes and to LNG too, as they look for affordable, reliable, and lower emissions energy to raise standards of living and strengthen their economies. Natural gas has far fewer emissions than coal, does not add to air pollution, is easily and safely transported as LNG, and is affordable. It can immediately help reduce both emissions and air pollution when used to replace higher emissions fuels. We need to say yes to energy equality and look to natural gas and LNG as one of the tools to help reach it. So we need to move away from the either or mindset that currently defines our energy dialogue. This is not a choice between renewables or LNG. Both are needed and both are complementary. After all, it is BC's same clean electricity grid, powered by hydroelectricity and renewables, that powers BC's lowest emission energy projects. Canada's LNG is a connector from renewables to low emission LNG to hydrogen. There is a direct connection. And when you look at the solutions that are required to ensure affordable, reliable, and lower emission energy in developing countries, renewables and LNG have a major role to play. So rather than either or, let's talk about yes and. Let's talk about renewables and LNG and hydrogen. Let's talk about the right solution in the right place at the right time. Let's talk about how we can use these tools to accelerate our energy transformation and equality, and how together these can drive economic recovery. Rather than arguing about which energy solution is the energy solution, let's come together to talk about empowering the myriad of solutions that will help Canada and the world achieve our shared goals of decarbonizing, reducing energy inequality, and providing economic development. By further developing our lowest emission LNG industry, we can help countries with higher emissions decarbonize across their economies, industrial, transportation, residential, and electricity. And our lowest emission LNG can be used as one of the pathways to the development of their hydrogen economies as well. Hydrogen developed from carbon capture and storage, perfected through Canada's gas industry, will be a key to a future economy powered by hydrogen. LNG is a transformation fuel, and the infrastructure we are building are empowering assets to this transformation. More than any other Canadian industry, LNG is a made in Canada industry that has been developed with equal participation with First Nations, something we as Canadians can be proud of. Together with the Canadian LNG Alliance, the Conference Board of Canada put out a report last year that found that sharing in opportunities from LNG can increase Indigenous economic prosperity and help close the wage gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people in Canada. LNG project development is well positioned to advance reconciliation. And Indigenous peoples are using financial benefits from LNG to advance social goals such as language preservation, promoting cultural heritage, and protecting the environment. Many of the benefits reported from the report observed from LNG development were noted from the Haisla Nation, which began looking into potential benefits of an LNG industry years ago. By saying yes and to the LNG industry, the Haisla have led the development of an industry on their territory that has reduced poverty in the community, created sustainable training and job opportunities, and fostered expertise within the community. And they're sharing that knowledge with other nations. And the Haisla are now leading the development of the exciting Cedar LNG project. Canada cannot say yes and to decarbonization without saying and to equal participation. This is vital to reconciliation. Finally, we can say yes to growing our economy and decarbonization. In another report released last year, the Conference Board of Canada found that growing the LNG industry in BC could mean for Canada nearly 100,000 more jobs a year across the country. The report clearly shows that every sector and every province stands to benefit as we develop this industry. It does not matter if you're in manufacturing, hospitality and tourism, or finance, in Toronto or Tofino, in Vancouver or Vanderhoof. We all benefit from a growing economy. We can say yes to growing our economy and fostering an industry that can help accelerate our pathway to decarbonization. So how do we build a yes and conversation here in Canada? By connecting through respectful and inclusive dialogue about a yes and approach to climate solutions. Times they are a-changing. The divisive tactics and positions of yesterday do not cut it anymore. We are in the midst of an energy transformation. How we engage in this transformation is key. Ensuring that Canadians see themselves as part of the solution is key. For we must ensure that this energy transformation is a just one, or we will be at risk of exacerbating the very inequalities that we are wanting to solve for, both here at home and abroad. We have a tool available right now to help us accelerate us towards our decarbonization goals. We can say yes to Canada's natural gas and LNG because it is an abundant and available energy source, available right now. Our and is that our Canadian LNG is a low carbon, affordable, and inclusive source of energy that helps accelerate us towards decarbonization. Yes and allows us to enter into conversations with each other to focus on solutions instead of disagreements. LNG is a yes and industry. It has been built on inclusiveness and equal opportunity. This is how we have been able to develop the lowest emission projects in the world in partnership with communities and Indigenous nations. Let's build on that legacy by modeling and fostering conversations here in Canada and overseas that start with yes and. Through a yes and approach, we will identify and pursue the opportunities that are available to us right now and accelerate us towards our shared goals and a sustainable future. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Bryan. Wow, that's a lot of information, a lot of great information, and really comprehensive. It's almost where do we begin? So I'm going to begin at the beginning. And you didn't tell me you used to be in beer.
Yeah, I did. Yes,
Those
indeed.
are the important details. You know, there is so much to talk about, but you did touch on this during your talk, but I do want to kind of go back. And the one thing that has really happened in the last year is this new transition from BC LNG Alliance to the Canadian LNG Alliance. And you did touch on that. I'm wondering if you can, just sort of expand on, the importance of creating that national brand as opposed to just a BC brand, and how that impacts and how important that is to LNG as a product nationally.
Yeah, thanks, Cheryl. And again, thanks to you and the Chamber for this event. It's really, really great. And you have just a great lineup of speakers. So I'm looking forward to tuning in after. Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that we have an opportunity to connect more on in Canada is that our economy is completely interconnected. Those who are involved in the industry know that. However, not everyone does. And so what we really wanted to do with that pivot to the Canadian LNG Alliance is engage with Canadians more broadly about how important investments like these are to the entire Canadian economy. And I touched on that Conference Board of Canada report, which really shows, and I encourage you to go look at it, and I'm sure we'll talk about it in the next panel a bit with Rocco from the Ontario Chamber. It's really staggering to see what the benefit is for the entire country as we develop this industry here in British Columbia. And I think that's something that we don't connect enough in Canada, is the importance of what happens in our natural resource industries right here in British Columbia and in the West has a direct effect on all of Canada. And it doesn't matter if you're in manufacturing, doesn't matter if you're in hospitality and tourism. So that's really what that pivot was about, was to say, hey, this is important that we do this, and we're doing it in the right way. And it's something that Canadians can be proud of as we move forward on this.
Absolutely. No, I agree. I know the Chamber, one of the goals for the Chamber right now is to be working on an energy literacy program, just to make people more aware about energy, and not just in the North and how it impacts our economy, but how it impacts everybody, whether it's from us up here, from people in Vancouver, and people in China and Korea, like you mentioned.
Yeah, and isn't that the story of BC, everyone? And isn't that the story of the Chamber Network? I mean, what happens in Fort St. John and in Northeast British Columbia powers our entire province. I mean, the industries that are the mining industry, the natural gas industry, renewable industry, like, it's all happening in the Northeast, and it all benefits our entire province. And we need to connect more on that. I think too often we get in these divisive discussions, Cheryl, and I think that's what Yes and is about seeing the shared values first, because we all have them, and then we can drive to solutions once we've done that.
Yeah, and I think that that's what's so important in the panel coming up, where we have connected with Rocco Rossi with the Ontario Chamber and David McCaddy with Tenaris. Yes. And it's important that we make these connections, as you've mentioned. And so I'm looking forward to that session. But a couple more things we want to talk about right here. The impact on the economy in the North through COVID, due to the energy sector, certainly has helped us, surf a little bit better throughout this pandemic. And, we're excited about how the energy sector is going to help the country recover. And, what are your thoughts about that in terms of how, us all coming together with this energy sector can help us move through recovery and reopening and get economies back in order, and maybe help the federal support that has helped everybody. And how do you see that?
Well, I mean, it's absolutely key, Cheryl. It's an excellent point, and it is the LNG opportunity. This is all growth, folks. This is all economic growth for our province, for our country, for all regions. And I think one of the untold stories of COVID, particularly in British Columbia, is how the LNG Canada's CGL project has actually balanced the books, kept British Columbia's economy humming. It is one of I trust that we'll be talking more about it, because that's what's actually kept us going in British Columbia and really helped provide benefit across the country during this really, really tough time. And now we have an opportunity to talk about this industry as a growth industry. And I think that is really the yes and shift that we need to talk about. The natural gas sector is a big part of the solution towards all of these solutions we're looking to solve for. And I think looking at that and saying that this is not an either or conversations, this is a multiple pathways conversation. We can have multiple sectors growing. We can have our metals and minerals sector growing, providing the assets to electric cars and wind panels and turbines. We can have our natural gas sector growing and developing and providing natural gas, renewable natural gas, opportunities to hydrogen and LNG export. Like, we can have all of these things with innovations, with partnerships. And I think that's the conversation that Canada needs to pivot to. And in order to do that, we need to come together and move towards solutions.
Definitely. I love that yes and methodology that you guys are implementing with your new focus on bringing all of Canada together. So I love that a lot. How do you see, well, first off, I want to ask you about the report that you guys had commissioned last year and rolled out. What drove creating that report and pulling all these facts and details together? Because I have read the report and it's really comprehensive. And what drove doing that? And what is the next step after that report to moving forward with solutions?
Yeah, so that report really, I mean, in my mind, was just kind of an extension, and I talked about it in my speech, of the One Province, One Economy report we did in the mining industry. It's about connecting. And that's why, the chamber network is so very important to this, because, there's multiple, I know those of you watching are in multiple sectors supplying. You might be in the industry, you might not even be in the industry. However, everyone is connected in some way to these industries, right? And I think was the whole point of that report, was in saying, okay, by growing this industry, what would that do to the Canadian economy? And that's why we wanted to partner with a group like the Conference Board of Canada, who I'm hoping most of the listeners know, is the unparalleled economic think tank in the country. So we wanted to partner with the best to be able to run their economic modeling to say, if we grow this industry, here's what it does to the Canadian economy. And what we really wanted to do differently than many reports in the past is, yes, we're really good at talking about the jobs that are on projects. When we build pipelines, when we build LNG facilities, those are super important. We need to talk about those a lot. What we have an opportunity to talk more about is what happens to the Canadian economy when we inject billions and billions and billions of dollars of investment into the economy. Well, guess what? It grows, because that's what happens. That's how our economies work. And it's just about maybe turning light bulbs off in people's head a little bit to go, oh yeah, this is good. We should look for ways to do more of that. And then we can have that inclusive conversation about how as British Columbians and Canadians, do we build more of this in partnership with communities, with Indigenous nations, with all of us. And the next step is really, like I said, Cheryl, that inclusive dialogue. We need to come together, policymakers, industry, Indigenous nations, civil society, to have this dialogue and not make it about a conversation, make it about a solution, because the time is now. We all know the deficits that our various levels of government are in. We need to solve for that. And economic development, private sector economic development, is so absolutely key to this. And the natural gas value chain all the way through is an incredible opportunity for our entire country to provide economic benefit in those strong communities that I always talk about.
So what I'm hearing is, the Fort St. John Chamber, we need to get out of our own bubble and start making those contacts across the country, start reaching out, start, seeing if we can collaborate and build those partnerships to help educate there, help educate over here in terms of how we're going to help each other and make sure we're utilizing everything LNG has to offer for the entire country.
And Cheryl, you're doing it. This next panel, you've got Rocco Rossi from the Ontario Chamber, you've got Dave McCaddy. How cool is that? That's
cool. I'm
It's
very
cool. And
excited
I
about
think
it.
that's the benefit of, hopefully we're going to be done these virtual sessions soon, everybody, and we'll be back together. But the benefit of doing something like this is we can come together from across the country in this virtual platform and connect ourselves again to say, hey, we're all in this together, folks, and it's time to put our shoulders to the wheel in partnership. So kudos to you.
Oh, thank you. So how do you think we can start making a bigger effort? What can the Fort St. John Chamber do beyond reaching out and building those partnerships? How do we all reach out and build bigger partnerships with, across our networks?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously using the benefit of the chamber network, Cheryl, I mean, you have those relationships amongst the other chambers, the BC chamber, other sectors. I just continue to do that. And if you're interested in what the benefits could be, if you're listening right now, I mean, go look at those reports and look at others that are out there. Mining, forestry, they've all done really, really wonderful reports that show that connection of what happens in our natural resource sector and how they connect, regardless of the industry you're in. So get that information, talk to your neighbors, talk to policymakers, and in a way that's, in a solutions-oriented way, because that's really the way forward. I think for way too long, we've kind of had these divisive conversations whereas now, as we pivot, as we reemerge and reconnect with each other, we have an opportunity to do things differently. And the Canadian LNG Alliance and myself personally, I'm committed to that. It's time. Like for our generation, for our kids' generation, for generations moving forward, we have an opportunity to show the world how we do this.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the plans working forward with inclusion and diversity, and of course, reconciliation with our Indigenous communities. You were here 2 years ago with our Creating Energy launch. We didn't know we'd go a year on a pause, but we partnered with Treaty 8 that year, and the feedback we have from touring Sequoia out at Charlie Lake in the caves and stuff, and building some of that Indigenous relationship beyond the chamber scope, but into the energy sector, in a little bit of a social manner, as opposed to a really professional platform at some of the other conferences. This really allowed people to gather and connect. So hopefully the goal next year will be that we can continue to build those partnerships and have that social aspect again, hopefully. And I think we're moving in the right direction with that. But certainly Canadian LNG Alliance plays a role in building those relationships for everybody and moving that forward, certainly through COVID recovery.
Yes, well, absolutely, and thank you again, Cheryl, for this opportunity to speak today. If anyone's interested in learning more, get in touch with us. If you're interested in being, we're trying to dialogue as much as we can, right? So, visit our website, contact us. We're happy to chat. And again, thank you for this opportunity.
And I encourage everybody to read the conference board report. It's really influential in terms of where we're moving in the future. Bryan, I really want to thank you for your talk this morning. You're always insightful and have so much information to share with all of us, and great direction. Yes, and we're going to continue this project, moving it forward. Our next panel, as we said, consists of David McHattie, yourself, Rocco Rossi. Stuart Muir is going to be facilitating that panel, and I look forward to that. I've missed somebody. Who have I missed?
Luke Showerty.
Oh, I'm sorry, Luke Showerty. And Luke is the new operations manager at the LNG plant at Kitimat. So I'm sure he's got a lot to share with us about the international perspective of moving LNG across the ocean and reaching some of those markets. So I'm excited to hear what he has too. So, so everybody just grab another cup of coffee, take a moment. I want to thank you again, Bryan, so much for being here, being with us again, and we'll see you in the next session again. Thank you.
Sounds great. Thanks.